The auditorium lights dimmed, and the crowd fell silent. A boy, no older than 12, walked nervously onto the stage. His clothes were simple, his shoes slightly worn, and his trembling hands clutched a guitar almost as big as him. For a moment, he looked so fragile that the audience feared he might break under the pressure. The judges exchanged uncertain glances. What could a child like him possibly bring to a stage renowned for world-class performances? Yet in his eyes, there was something unshakable, a quiet determination, the kind born not of privilege, but of survival. His name was Gabriel. He came from a small town where dreams often died before they could take root. His father had worked long hours as a janitor, his mother as a waitress, yet even together, they barely managed to keep the family afloat. When Gabriel's father passed away suddenly in an accident, the boy's world collapsed. But instead of giving up, Gabriel picked up the old guitar his father once strummed on sleepless nights. That guitar became his anchor, his escape, his prayer. As he adjusted the microphone, the judges noticed his nervous swallow, the way his shoulders slumped with the weight of invisible burdens. Then, in a voice soft yet steady, he introduced himself. "My name is Gabriel, and I'm going to sing Hotel California." The audience stirred. Some chuckled quietly, such a song, so iconic, chosen by a child. But within moments, the laughter faded into reverent silence. The first note he strummed was imperfect, but it carried a truth that polished musicians often lacked. His voice cracked slightly, then grew stronger, as if fueled by every hardship he had endured. It wasn't just a performance, it was a confession, a window into his soul. The lyrics poured out like a river of sorrow and hope intertwined, each word holding the weight of nights he had gone hungry, mornings he had woken to his mother crying in the kitchen. The audience leaned forward, pulled by a current they couldn't resist. One judge, a woman known for her stern critiques, found her eyes welling with tears against her will. She pressed her hand to her chest, struck by the raw honesty in Gabriel's voice. Another judge, hardened by decades of seeing contestants rise and fall, turned his head slightly to hide his trembling lips. They were not merely hearing a song, they were living his story through it. Halfway through, something unexpected happened. Gabriel's voice broke, and for a second, silence filled the hall. The boy looked down, ashamed, on the verge of giving up. But then, from the back of the crowd, someone shouted, "You've got this, Gabriel!" It was his mother, standing with tears streaming down her face. The audience erupted into applause, urging him on. Strangers clapped, cheered, and whispered words of encouragement. In that instant, Gabriel straightened his shoulders. He closed his eyes, and when he sang again, his voice carried the power of 1,000 prayers. The judges could no longer strum the very same chords. Back then, his father promised he'd be back soon, but days turned into years. The guitar had been left behind, and Ethan had taught himself to play, holding onto it as though it carried his father's spirit. Every time he sang the song, it was like reaching out into the dark, hoping for an answer that never came. The crowd was silent now, utterly still. Tears welled in the eyes of strangers who didn't know his story but felt it in every note. Even the judges, seasoned and sometimes cynical, shifted in their seats, their pens forgotten. One of the judges, a retired music teacher named Mrs. Carter, later said she had never seen anything like it. It wasn't the voice alone, she explained. It was the soul behind it. You could feel this boy's pain and hope all tangled together, and it touched everyone in that room. By the time Ethan reached the final chorus, his voice was barely more than a whisper. Yet, that whisper carried more power than the loudest performance of the night. As the last chord faded into the stillness, Ethan bowed his head, not daring to look up. He thought he had failed, that the tears had ruined everything. Then, the first clap came. Slow, steady, deliberate. It was followed by another, then another, until the entire auditorium erupted into applause. People were on their feet, clapping, cheering, even crying. Ethan finally lifted his head, blinking in disbelief. He saw faces lit with something he had never seen directed at him before, pure admiration. But the most unexpected moment came when a man from the audience stood up. He was tall, weathered by years, with tired eyes that shone with moisture. He slowly walked down the aisle toward the stage. Ethan froze, his breath caught in his chest. The man looked achingly familiar. It was his father. Gasps rippled through the audience as the man climbed onto the stage, ignoring the puzzled expressions of judges and organizers. He stood before his son, trembling, unsure, as though every step forward had been a battle. Ethan's guitar slipped from his hands, landing softly on the stage floor. Neither spoke for a long moment. The world seemed to hold its breath. Finally, his father whispered, "You remembered." His voice cracked with the weight of years lost. "You remembered our song." The boy's lips quivered. He wanted to be angry, to push this man away for the pain of abandonment, but standing there in the flood of light, with hundreds of people watching, all Ethan felt was the ache of love he had never stopped carrying. Tears streamed freely now, not just from him but from the man before him. And then, Ethan did something no one expected. He stepped forward and hugged his father. The audience erupted again, louder than before, not just for the song but for the moment of forgiveness they had all witnessed. Some wiped their eyes openly. Parents clutched their children a little tighter. And for Ethan, it was as if the weight he had carried for 6